Philip Axelrod.
My name is Philip Axelrod, and I'm a gun owner here to voice disapproval of Bill 1094. You have my testimony. I'm going to read a little bit off it and then go on to a couple of points from testimony that we've already heard today. I'm going to introduce myself. I go to the University of Connecticut, where I'm a secondary biology education major. I'm a senior in the program. I'm currently in my student teaching semester and full-time in Manchester. And I took time out from my student teaching to come here today because I feel so strongly about this. The president and co-founder of the UConn Pistol and Rifle Club. I've taught over 200, I think I did the math, I think it's like 235 different students, new shooters, how to fire a shot safely on the range. I was captain of my high school rifle team. I'm originally from Meriden, Connecticut. I went to Platt High School. I joined my junior year. I took over as captain my senior year, and I absolutely fell in love with the shooting sports. I've shot thousands upon thousands of rounds from dozens of different types of firearms, from rifles to pistols to machine guns to shotguns to a grenade launcher once, and that was awesome. I've also worked for 3 years, or I used to. I no longer do since I've gone to school, but I used to work for 3 years at a rifle range and gun store, and I remember when the incident with the Pettit family, that horrible home invasion in Cheshire happened, and I remember how many more firearms I sold the next week. It was significantly more. I want to give you a little bit of a history lesson. Once again, I'm a teacher. I like lessons and I love history, although I'm a biology teacher. In the year 1935, the Browning High Power was released to the public for purchase. This was the first handgun to use a detachable double-stack magazine, and it held 13 rounds. Since the High Power, most handguns chambered in anything smaller than a .45 ACP cartridge have been designed to hold more than 10 rounds, and many that are chambered in the .45 ACP also hold more than 10 rounds. Calling a 10-round magazine a, quote, large capacity magazine or high capacity magazine is patently inaccurate. The Glock 17, arguably the most popular and most issued firearm currently on the market, holds 17 rounds. The 19, the slightly smaller version, holds 15. Smith & Wesson M&P 9, gaining popularity in the market right now, it's newer than the Glock, holds 17. The CZ75 model P01 that I routinely carry on my person when I'm not teaching holds 14 rounds in its magazine. Almost every production handgun designed in the last 80 years has been designed to hold more than 10 rounds in its magazine. These are not large capacity, these are standard capacity. And the similar story accompanies rifles. Since World War II, there's been increasing numbers of rifles designed to hold more than 10 rounds. The AR-15 is the most popular one going right now. I personally own 2 of them. I've owned 3. And most gun owners these days are following this trend and purchasing rifles and handguns that hold more than 10 rounds as designed. Criminals don't pay attention to the rules and the laws of our society, by definition. However, also, in order to enforce this law, the state police and local police would have to be prepared to look for people who would be in violation, criminals. They are not prepared and will never be prepared to do house-to-house searches. And this makes this law, this bill, if passed, little more than a trump charge. It adds a felony to an offense that already happened. I am not a criminal. I am licensed to carry. I am going into the military when I graduate UConn, and I am very proud of the fact that I am not a criminal. Do not paint me with the same brush as people who would commit crimes with firearms. I carry for my personal protection. In regards to a couple of things that have been said, again with the Pettit family, I know what motivated me after that to get more involved with this. I'm from Meriden, Connecticut. I'm the next town over. I was in high school. I was a senior in high school when it happened. I remember the day. I was actually in Virginia when I heard about it at a shooting competition. And as I came back to work that next week, I saw the people who were terrified. People from different towns, every kind of town, urban, suburban, rural, came into my store, the store where I worked, and asked me about buying a firearm, a lot of the times for the first time, or what I would suggest. I remember the fear in their eyes. I remember the fear that I felt after it happened. What hit home for me was the invasion. It was near my hometown. I live less than 10 minutes away. And the violence that these people showed against these homeowners, these innocent people. And I swore never to me. I keep a gun loaded when I sleep next to my bedside with a flashlight on it, my CZ. It holds 14 rounds, and I'm ready to use it in case someone invades where I live. As a teacher, I feel education is key. We need public resource programs. We need public education programs that will reduce the number of people turning to crime. And also in regard, my last thing that I really wanted to say, in regard to reloading versus bigger magazines, criminals prepare themselves to commit crimes. I can prepare myself as best as is possible to defend myself, and I like to think that I do. But in the middle of the night, if I hear my door get knocked down or I hear a window shatter and I grab my handgun, an extra mag is hard for me to carry. Pockets on pajamas aren't very good. And reloading, fumbling through a pocket to pick up that extra magazine, fumbling to reload it under stressful conditions. I'm a competitive shooter as well. And I went to a low light pistol competition where they did turn down the lights. It was very hard to acquire a target. And I would probably not be able to make good hits on the first few rounds, especially under conditions of defending my life. A larger magazine becomes a necessity for me. They can reload. I might not have that opportunity because they might have better pockets, pouches that will hold magazines. My pajamas don't have that. That was all I would like to say, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there questions, Representative Sampson, and then Representative Hetherington?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Philip, thank you for coming in today. Your testimony was very well thought out and very well delivered as well. Just a couple of questions. Several of the folks that have testified against SB 1094 today have brought up similar arguments. One of them about how, well, let me start with the bedroom scenario first and foremost. I don't want this to end up being just a discussion about whether or not you'd be able to find a second magazine in the dark in a bedroom, because then the argument might seem then, well, that's a different case than if you were at the mall, for instance. And that leads to the second part of my question, which is, do you feel that law-abiding citizens who have pistol permits and carry make society safer?
I very much do. I'm a member of a couple of student organizations that feel the same, specifically Students for Concealed Carry on campus. I feel that the ability for people who have been licensed to carry in their daily lives significantly increases their safety and the safety of those around them should they get training. I have a decent amount of training, not all that elite, but I also compete. I go to the range and I practice, and I started a club at the University of Connecticut along with a few friends of mine to encourage people to learn how to fire a shot safely, to increase their proficiency with firearms for whatever purpose they see is necessary, from competition, my personal background, to self-protection, and a lot of people going into the service.
Very good. By definition, then, many of the places we assume are going to be safer, schools, universities, this building, for instance, may or may not be safer because people do not have the ability to defend themselves. And so often they're used as targets by maniacs, like in the Virginia Tech situation.
I very much agree with that statement. And just from, very briefly, from a personal note, I was the victim of an assault when I was in high school. Since then, I have, unless it is illegal to be, I have never been unarmed from a pocket knife when I was 16 until carrying a gun today. It is a real issue for me. It became personal one day in the woods that is a couple hundred yards away from my house that I grew up in. So it strikes a tone with me. Self-protection is a right that I don't think should be ever reduced.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Representative Hetherington.
Thank thank you very much for being here. You're obviously very knowledgeable. I have limited knowledge of guns. When I used to go shooting with my father when I was a kid, of course they were flintlocks in those days. But
I grew up shooting a single-shot
Okay.
22, so.
but you bring some information that I wasn't aware of at all, and that is that high-capacity magazines in excess of 10 rounds is much more common than I had realized. And I kind of gleaned from what you said that a substantial part of the semi-automatic handgun market are guns that do accommodate high-capacity magazines.
I can name more modern firearms, more semi-automatic firearms that hold more than 10 rounds than I can name that don't.
So if you
And
went
I
in-
have a pretty decent knowledge of the history of firearms. It's a passion and a hobby of mine.
do you have any information as to those firearms that are made in Connecticut?
Yes, actually, Sturm Ruger has offices here. Just in terms of handguns versus rifles, we have a lot of manufacturers of rifles specifically. Ruger, for instance, also makes rifles that hold more than 10 rounds, with the Mini 14 and the 1022 being the premier ones. Stag in New Britain, Colt in Hartford, JLD PTR 91 down in, I believe, Farmington. I don't remember exactly what town they're in off the top of my head. Mecgar imports into here. We have C Products, which is both of these are manufacturers or importers of magazines specifically. And C Products puts a lot of, gets most of their money, I would assume. I don't know their statistics, but from what I've seen, they sell a lot of AR-15 magazines that have a capacity of 30 rounds, which again is the standard capacity magazine going these days. Either the two real options for magazines that are not specialty for single shot target competition are 20 or 30 rounds. So the 10-round magazines are in fact a rarity.
So if I went into a gun shop today to buy a new weapon,
Yes, sir.
semi-automatic, the likelihood is that most of what I would be offered would be a high-capacity magazine.
I could talk for about an hour on the purpose behind it, and there's a lot of different options there. I'm not going to. But if you bought a modern semi-automatic rifle, so for the most popular ones going in this state would be either an AR-15, possibly an AK-74, not 47, those are illegal in the state, but the 74 model, or for a handgun, a Glock 17 or 19, a Smith & Wesson M&P9, a SIG of some variety or another. It's another company that makes them. It would more likely than not have a magazine in excess of 10 rounds.
Okay. Because this gives us a better idea of the number of people that are impacted by this.
I would say the vast majority right now of gun owners, everyone who has bought a rifle or pistol manufactured and designed within the last 50 or so years, has a firearm capable of holding more than 10 rounds.
Okay. I thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Adinolfi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome. Just talking about the different types of rifles that are made and weapons that are made. We received a lot of calls and correspondence on this.
A few of them were from me, I'm sure.
And one of the things that impressed me is there's some people that don't even go out and shoot. They're collectors.
Mm-hmm.
And they have these rifles and these guns on their walls and cases, and he says, you know, the 15-round clip or the 20-pound clip, 20-round clip in the looks better on the wall just for display. And they're not criminals, and they're not even shooters.
Mm-hmm.
So they have rights too.
I agree.